You think it's over, don't you? They've gone quiet. They're acting like they've moved on. Maybe they're even posting pictures, smiling, living like you never existed. But here's the truth they'll never tell you. It's not over. Not for them. Behind that mask of indifference is a storm they're trying to control. They're pretending because they want you to believe you're replaceable, but deep down they're asking themselves if they made a mistake. Right now, they're testing your reaction, waiting to see if you'll break and chase them, and that's where your power lies. Because the moment you hold your ground and don't feed their ego, they'll feel the emptiness they've been avoiding. And when it hits them, it won't be subtle. It'll be loud, undeniable, and they won't be able to hide it anymore. You know what's fascinating? How good people can be at pretending. They put on this face like they're completely unbothered, like the relationship didn't even leave a dent on them. They act as if it's all so easy, like walking away from you was the simplest, most logical decision they ever made. But let me tell you something. It's an act. It's a mask they've learned to wear because showing the truth would feel too vulnerable. And the truth is, they're not as detached as they want you to believe. When someone ends a relationship, or even when they pull away, they don't suddenly erase their feelings. They don't magically stop caring. That's not how human emotions work. But here's the problem. Their ego doesn't want you to know that. Their pride is screaming at them. Don't let them see you're hurting. Don't let them see you still care. So they bury it. They build this wall around themselves and cover it up with what looks like indifference. Maybe they post pictures online, laughing with friends, going out, living their so-called best life. Or worse, they stay completely silent, creating a vacuum that makes you wonder, have they already moved on? Was I really that easy to replace? And this is where the mind games begin. Not always because they're trying to hurt you, but because they're trying to protect themselves from the pain of losing control. You see, pretending it's over gives them a sense of power. If they can convince you and themselves that they've closed the door, they don't have to sit with the uncomfortable truth that their feelings are still there. They don't have to wrestle with regret or question whether they made the right choice. They don't have to face the reality that maybe they still care more than they're willing to admit. But let's make something very clear. If someone truly didn't care, they wouldn't need to act indifferent. They wouldn't need to put on a show. Indifference doesn't require effort. Real indifference is quiet, effortless, and complete. What they're doing, this is calculated. It's designed to send a message. I'm fine, I'm happy, I don't need you. But that message is as much for themselves as it is for you. And here's where most people make the mistake. They believe the act. They panic. They see the mask and think, I have to break through this. I have to make them see how much I care. I have to remind them of what we had. So they reach out, they over-explain, they chase, and in doing so, they give away all of their power. But what they don't realize is that the person who's pretending to be unaffected is watching carefully. They're paying attention to how you respond to their silence, to their mask of indifference. If you run after them, it reassures them that they still matter, that they still hold the upper hand. But if you don't, if you hold your ground, if you resist the urge to play into their game, that's when the cracks start to appear. Because the truth is, they're not nearly as strong as they're pretending to be. That mask they're wearing, it's heavy, and they can only hold it up for so long. The silence they're using as a shield eventually turns into a prison, one that forces them to sit alone with their thoughts. And in that quiet, the emotions they've been trying so hard to suppress start bubbling up to the surface. What if they made a mistake? What if you're slipping away for real this time? What if you're the one who's actually moving on? Those questions don't hit all at once. They creep in slowly at first, then faster, louder, until they can't ignore them anymore. That's the moment where the balance of power shifts. When they realize you're not chasing, not breaking, not begging for their attention. They're left with one terrifying possibility. Maybe it really is over, and maybe this time it's my fault. So don't be fooled by the mask. Don't let their act shake your confidence or make you question your worth. You're not the one who needs to prove anything here. The person who walked away with a mask of indifference is the one with something to prove to themselves. And when they finally realize they've been pretending and you're not there waiting anymore, that's when the truth hits them the hardest. We live in a world where people curate their emotions as carefully as they curate their Instagram feeds. When someone wants you to believe they've moved on, they know exactly where to go. They go online. They post pictures smiling with friends, at parties, traveling to new places. They make sure their stories are filled with little moments that scream, "I'm fine, I'm happy. Look at me thriving without you." And it works, doesn't it? It gets in your head. You scroll past their updates and your stomach drops. You start wondering, how can they be so unaffected? How can they just move on like I never mattered? But here's what no one tells you. Those updates are not reality. They're a performance. A carefully staged production designed to send a very specific message, not to the world, but to you. It's their way of saying, "See, I'm good. I don't need you." But let me tell you something. It's not about you. It's about them. It's about their need to convince themselves that they're winning this silent battle. Most people don't know how to sit in their pain. They don't know how to process the void that follows a connection. So instead, they do what's easiest. They distract themselves and try to project strength. And because we live in this digital age, it's easy to fake it. It's easy to snap a photo at just the right angle, with just the right lighting, surrounded by just the right people, and make the world think they're having the time of their life. What you don't see is the moment after the camera clicks, the phone goes back in their pocket, and they're left with silence. That's when the truth seeps in. That's when the doubts creep up. But you won't see that part because they don't post the 2am moments staring at the ceiling. They don't post the emptiness that hits after the party ends. And yet you sit there scrolling, torturing yourself, comparing your behind the scene's pain to their highlight reel. You don't realize that you're only seeing the version they want you to see. The louder they appear online, the more likely it is they're trying to fill a void. Because people who are truly at peace don't need to prove it to anyone. They don't need to broadcast their happiness. They're too busy living it. Here's the dangerous part. When you believe their act, you start acting out of insecurity. You text them, you call them, you try to remind them of what you had because you think you're losing them, but they weren't gone yet. They were just pretending to be. And the moment you reach out, you hand them the power they were craving. Suddenly, they don't have to wonder if you still care because you've just confirmed it for them. And that's when the dynamic shifts. They pull back even more because now they know you're still tethered to them. But imagine this. What if you didn't react? What if you didn't take the bait? What if you let them play out their little theater performance without an audience? That's when things get interesting. Because when they post that photo and don't get the reaction they were hoping for, they start to question. They wonder, why hasn't she reached out? Does she even care? That seed of doubt grows louder than any attention they're getting from the outside world. The truth is, if they really didn't care, they wouldn't need to show you how fine they are. Indifference doesn't require proof. Silence doesn't need validation. So the next time you see them laughing in a photo or posting lyrics about being unbothered, remind yourself, it's not a window into their heart. It's a wall they've built to keep you from seeing what's really there. If you can remember this, you'll stop giving their social media so much power. You'll stop letting their curated version of reality dictate how you feel about yourself. And most importantly, you'll stay in control. Because the person who can stay calm in the face of that illusion is the one who holds the real power. And that's when they'll feel it, the shift. The realization that they're not in your head the way they hoped. That's when their mask begins to slip. And trust me, when it does, it's louder than any picture they could ever post. You see, here's what most people don't realize. When someone pulls away and acts like it's over, it's not always because they're sure about leaving. Sometimes it's because they're testing you. They want to see if you'll break, if you'll chase, if you'll do something, anything, that confirms to them they still hold power over you. And that's the dangerous game they're playing, because while they're pretending to be strong, they're actually the ones who are scared. Scared you'll detach. Scared you'll realize your own worth without them. Scared that the control they thought they had over your emotions is slipping through their fingers. So when they go silent, don't be fooled into thinking silence means certainty. It doesn't. Silence often means confusion. It's their ego stepping in, saying, don't let them see you care. Don't let them know you're hurting. Make them come to you. And if you respond by panicking, if you rush in to prove how much they still matter, if you try to win them back in that moment, you've just handed them all the power. You've confirmed exactly what their ego needed to feel safe again. But here's where it gets interesting. The very thing they're afraid of is the thing they're trying to avoid seeing. You staying calm, staying still, and not reacting. Because the moment they notice you're not running after them, the moment they realize you're not fighting to keep the connection alive, that's when their act begins to crack. Suddenly they're not sure if they've won. They're not sure if they can still have you whenever they want. And that uncertainty is where regret starts to creep in. You have to understand, this isn't about playing games. This isn't about making someone feel bad. It's about reclaiming your power. If they ended things or chose to pull away, let them sit with that choice. Don't rush in to rescue them from the consequences of their actions. Don't soothe their ego when they're the one who created the distance. Because when you do, you send the message, you can treat me however you want, and I'll still show up for you. But when you don't, when you stay quiet and refuse to chase, you send a very different message. I am not an option you get to revisit at your convenience. I'm not here to validate you. I'm here to live my life, with or without you. And trust me, that energy is magnetic. It makes them question everything. Right now, they might be pretending they've moved on, pretending they're unfazed. But behind closed doors, they're wondering if they made a mistake. They're wondering why you haven't called, why you haven't begged, why you haven't done what they expected. And every hour you don't reach out, the seed of doubt grows stronger. This is where most people fail, because sitting in that stillness is uncomfortable. It feels like you're doing nothing. It feels like you're losing them forever. But the truth is, this is the most powerful position you can take. By doing nothing, you're doing everything. You're forcing them to sit with the emptiness they created. You're forcing them to see what life feels like without your energy, your attention, your love. And here's the beautiful part. If they really cared, that realization will hit them like a wave. They'll go from feeling in control to feeling terrified they've lost you for good. And in that moment, the dynamic flips completely. Suddenly, it's not about whether you want them back. It's about whether they can earn a place in your life again. So the next time you feel the urge to break the silence, pause and ask yourself, are you reaching out because it's what you truly want? Or are you doing it to calm your own anxiety? Because if it's the second, you're only feeding their ego, not building real connection. Remember, real love doesn't need to be tested like this. Someone who truly values you won't play games to see if you care. And someone who walks away doesn't deserve to see how deeply you'd fight for them, unless they're willing to fight for you too. The shocking truth is that people often don't realize what they've lost until you stop showing up for them. And when you finally stop, it forces them to face the reality they've been avoiding. Life without you is a lot quieter, emptier, and colder than they thought. So let them pretend, let them act strong, let them believe for a while that they've moved on. Because while they're playing that game, you're doing something far more powerful. You're showing them what it feels like to lose someone who genuinely cared. And when that truth finally hits them, it will hit harder than they ever expected. Here's what you have to understand. Regret doesn't come in one big dramatic wave. It's not like they wake up one morning, bolt upright in bed, and suddenly realize they've lost the most important person in their life. No, it doesn't happen like that. Regret comes quietly. It comes in moments. At first, it's a faint whisper they can easily ignore. They're out with friends. They're distracted. They're convincing themselves they're fine. But then there's silence. The noise dies down, the distractions fade, and they're left alone with nothing but their own thoughts. That's when the cracks begin to show. In the beginning, they might even feel confident in their decision. They're telling themselves it was the right thing to do. They're convincing themselves they're strong, independent, that they made a clean break. But the truth is much messier than that, because no matter how much they try to rationalize it, the human heart doesn't operate on logic. It operates on connection, on emotion, and that's not something you can just shut off like flipping a switch. At first, they'll only feel tiny pangs, maybe when they hear a song you both used to play in the car, when they pass by a restaurant where you once sat across from them, laughing like there was no one else in the world. They'll shake it off. They'll tell themselves, it's nothing. It's just nostalgia. But that's the beginning. That's the first wave. Then there's the second wave. This one's stronger. It might hit late at night, lying in bed, scrolling through their phone, and realizing there's no message from you, no good night, no check-in to see how their day went. Suddenly there's a hollowness where you used to be. It's subtle at first, but it's there. They can feel it. And they'll try to fill it, maybe with someone new, maybe with work, maybe with endless distractions. But here's the thing, no one else is you. They'll feel the difference. As more time passes, these waves of regret grow heavier, and this is the part they didn't expect. They thought moving on would feel freeing, but instead it feels like they're losing a piece of themselves they can't get back. That's when the questions start creeping in. Did I make the right decision? What if they don't care anymore? What if they've moved on? That uncertainty gnaws at them, quietly at first, then louder. It's not always obvious from the outside. They might still act like they're fine. They might post pictures, smile in public, laugh with friends. But those moments are often carefully curated for the world to see. Behind closed doors, it's a different story. That's when the stillness becomes unbearable. That's when their confidence falters, and they realize they've been running, not from you, but from the feelings they can't face. And here's where it gets interesting. The less you do, the stronger their regret grows. If you chase them, if you reach out, if you make it easy for them to keep you in their orbit, you interrupt that process. You save them from feeling the full weight of what they've lost. But if you step back, if you let them sit with the emptiness they created, it becomes harder for them to deny their feelings. That's when the waves stop being something they can manage and start pulling them under. And here's the shocking part. They won't always admit it. Some people are too proud to come back, too stubborn to say, I was wrong. But don't confuse silence for peace. Just because they don't say the words out loud doesn't mean they're not screaming them in their head. What if I blew it? What if I never find that kind of connection again? These thoughts keep them awake at night, and the moment they realize you're not there anymore, not waiting, not hoping, not holding space for them, that's when regret becomes real. So don't be fooled by the facade they're putting on right now. The smiles, the confidence, the pretending. Regret doesn't hit like a thunderclap. It builds slowly, wave after wave, until one day it's impossible to ignore. And when that day comes, they'll either find the courage to admit it, or they'll be left sitting in the quiet, wondering how they let someone like you slip through their fingers. Because sooner or later, they all feel it. The less you react, the more power you gain. And I don't mean power in some manipulative way where you're trying to win or punish them. I'm talking about the quiet, dignified power that comes from refusing to let someone else's actions control your emotions. When someone walks away and acts like they don't care, their expectation is that you'll rush in. They expect the late night text, the desperate call, the "I miss you" message wild, because it reaffirms their importance in your world. It tells them they still have a hold over you, that they can leave and you'll still be there waiting. But the moment you stop giving them that validation, you create a silence that's louder than any words you could say. Here's the part they never see coming. When you hold back from reacting, it forces them to sit with the discomfort of their own choices. At first, they'll convince themselves it's fine. They'll scroll through their phone, distract themselves, maybe even talk to someone new. But eventually, when the distractions fade, they'll start to notice something's missing. That instant reassurance they used to get from you isn't there anymore. And instead of feeling powerful, they're confronted with doubt. Did I make the right choice? Why aren't they reaching out? Have they moved on? And in those quiet moments when they're alone, no music playing, no friends around, just them and their thoughts, that's when the weight of your absence starts to grow. Because you didn't feed the cycle. You didn't give them the emotional boost they were counting on. And that absence, it's like oxygen being pulled out of a room. It's suffocating. But let me tell you something important. This isn't about playing games. It's about protecting your self-worth. Because every time you choose not to react, not to send that text, not to chase, you're proving to yourself that you don't need their validation to feel whole. And when you radiate that kind of strength, it's magnetic. It draws people in, not because you're trying, but because they feel the shift in energy. You're no longer the person waiting for their crumbs of attention. You've become the person they fear losing for real. Here's what happens next. At first, they'll test you. Maybe they'll post something online, a subtle attempt to get a rise out of you. They'll want to know, are they watching? Are they still hooked? When they get nothing, no likes, no comments, no reaction, they'll feel a pang they weren't prepared for. That's when the facade starts to crack. Then the reach out comes. It might be small at first, a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" Or even a random meme they send like nothing happened. But make no mistake, it's not casual for them. That message isn't about you. It's about them trying to reclaim the power they lost when you stopped reacting. This is where your choice matters most. Do you break your silence to feed their ego again? Or do you keep standing firm, knowing your value doesn't depend on their attention? Because here's the truth. If they come back, it should never be because you chased them down. It should be because they realized on their own that losing you was their biggest mistake. So breathe, hold your ground, and remember, the less you react, the more you shift the dynamic. The moment they realize they're no longer the center of your world, they'll feel it. And trust me, when they do, it won't be subtle. The moment they sense you're not chasing anymore, everything shifts. At first, they might not notice it because they're still wrapped up in their own little performance, acting like they've moved on, pretending they're unbothered. But the silence, your silence, it does something they didn't prepare for. Suddenly, the control they thought they had over the situation starts to slip through their fingers. You see, when someone walks away and puts on that show of strength, they're often banking on one thing, that you'll crack first, that you'll text, that you'll call, that you'll prove they still hold power over you. It's comforting for their ego to believe you're still orbiting them, that even in separation, you're tethered. But when you don't react, when you refuse to give them that validation, it creates this unsettling void they can't fill with distraction. At first, they might brush it off. Oh, they'll reach out eventually. They always do. That's what they tell themselves. But as days turn into weeks, and you're still quiet, something starts to gnaw at them. It's not just curiosity anymore. It's panic. Panic because now they're confronted with a possibility they didn't want to consider. Maybe they weren't as irreplaceable as they thought. Maybe you're not sitting there longing for their return. Maybe you've started to detach. That's the shocking truth they never expect to face. People think they can walk away and keep you as an option. They assume you'll still be there, waiting in the shadows, ready to forgive, ready to fight for them, even when they've stopped